There are only a couple weeks left in the college football season, and the Heisman race is still wide open. When I say wide open, I mean there are 4 players that have really good odds to win the Heisman still. As of right now, there are 4 players that have better odds than 6-1, which at this point in the season is absolutely crazy. Sure, there's a player that's a favorite, but as of right now, I think there are genuinely 4 players that have a chance of winning the Heisman this season. Before we get to today's video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos all season, so make sure to subscribe to join one of the best college football communities here on YouTube. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. Before we talk about the 4 players that are still alive in the Heisman race, I quickly want to talk about 2 other players who, although their odds are currently long shots, I think there's still a slight chance they're in the race. I'll start with Alabama quarterback Jalen Milroe, who is currently 50-1 to win the Heisman, but he does have the 6th best odds. Overall, his numbers on the season are pretty good, as he's thrown for 2,100 yards with 16 passing touchdowns. He's also added 300 yards on the ground with 12 rushing scores as well. Again, pretty decent numbers, but what he's done over the past month I think has really boosted his Heisman chances. I mean, let's just take a look at his last 5 games. Against Texas A&M, he threw for over 300 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. Against Arkansas, he threw for 250 yards with 3 total touchdowns. In a win against a ranked Tennessee team, he threw for 200 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Then in another ranked victory against LSU, he threw for 220 yards while rushing for 150 yards and 4 rushing scores. Then this past weekend on the road at Kentucky, he threw for 250 yards with 3 passing touchdowns while also adding 3 touchdowns on the ground as well. His numbers overall for the season aren't as good as other quarterbacks, but you can make the case that Jalen Milroe has been one of the best players in all of college football over the past month. He has 2 games left in the regular season and then has a matchup against number 1 Georgia in the SEC title game. If he finishes the season strong and has an insane game and knocks off Georgia in the SEC title game, I'm just saying Jalen Milroe might really have a chance at winning the Heisman. Another player who I think has a slight chance is Georgia quarterback Carson Beck, who currently has 35-1 odds, but that has him as the 5th best odds at the moment. Beck has been fantastic this season for Georgia in his first season as the starter. He's thrown for over 3,000 yards with 18 passing touchdowns. Like with Milroe, Beck has really turned things around over the past month of the season. In a ranked win against Kentucky, he threw for 400 yards with 4 passing touchdowns. In a rivalry game against Florida, he threw for over 300 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. In a ranked victory at home against Missouri, he threw for just under 300 yards with 2 passing touchdowns. Then this past weekend, in another ranked victory over Ole Miss, he threw for over 300 yards with 2 passing touchdowns as well. Again, there are other players that are probably going to be ahead of him, but if Carson Beck finishes the season strong and has a great showing against Alabama in the SEC title game, well, he might hang around and still have a shot. Alright though, let's get to the 4 players that are still in this Heisman race that currently have 6-1 or better odds. We'll start with Ohio State wide receiver Marvin Harrison Jr, who currently is 6-1 to win the Heisman. Prior to the start of the season, I had Marvin Harrison Jr in my top 10 Heisman list. I also had him as the number 1 player who could win the award being a non-quarterback. He had a lot of expectations surrounding him entering the season, and somehow he's actually exceeded them. He's caught 59 passes for over 1,000 yards, averaging 18 yards per reception. He also has 12 receiving touchdowns and a touchdown on the ground as well. He's currently number 2 in the Big Ten in receptions, but leads the conference in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. There may be a few other wide receivers who have put up better numbers than Marvin Harrison has this season, but without him, I don't know where Ohio State would be. I mean, he essentially is their entire offense. The reason Ohio State has won so many games this season is because of Marvin Harrison Jr.'s play. In a 14-point victory against Wisconsin, he caught 6 passes for 120 yards with 2 touchdowns. In a 19-point victory against Rutgers, he had 2 receiving touchdowns as well. If you take out his production in all of these games, Ohio State is probably barely winning. So for that reason, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. needs to be a finalist. Up next, we have 2 players who are currently tied at plus 370. We'll start with Washington quarterback Michael Penix Jr., who has been fantastic for the Huskies this year. He's completing 68% of his passes and is thrown for 3,500 yards. He also has 28 passing touchdowns as well. Penix Jr. leads the country country with this 3,500 passing yards. He's 4th in the country in passing touchdowns and 2nd in the country in total yards per play. The only reason Michael Penix has slipped over these last couple of weeks is because Washington has had a number of really close games lately. I mean, they struggled to beat a bad Arizona State team and they struggled to beat a bad Stanford team. And although Washington has back-to-back ranked victories, Penix Jr. has been kind of quiet in those games. Against USC, he only threw for 250 yards with 2 touchdowns. Then this past weekend against Utah, he had a quiet first half, but he ended up finishing the game with 300 yards and 2 passing touchdowns. With a couple of tough games remaining and a likely spot in the Pac-12 title game, Penix Jr. still has a really solid chance of winning the Heisman Trophy by finishing his season strong. Before we get to the rest of today's video, I'd like to share with you guys how you can win money during the college football season. I've partnered with Underdog Fantasy to bring you this amazing deal. If you download the Underdog Fantasy app and use promo code Harris, they'll match your first deposit up to $500. Yep, they're giving you up to $500 of free money. I've had a lot of success all season with college football and the NFL, and you can do the exact same with Underdog Fantasy. Use promo code Harris for a 100% deposit match up to $500. You can also sign up using the link in my description as well. Now, this is where I think things get very interesting for the Heisman discussion. Tied with Penix Jr. at plus 370 odds is LSU quarterback Jayden Daniels. Now, the only reason Jayden Daniels isn't the current betting favorite is because LSU has 3 losses. Now, I think that's a joke because isn't the whole reason of the Heisman Trophy to go to the best player in college football? And if that's the case, it should go to Jayden Daniels. What he's done for LSU this season has been nothing short of spectacular. He's completing 71% of his passes and is thrown for 3,100 yards. He has 30 passing touchdowns with only 4 interceptions. As if that wasn't impressive enough, listen to what he's done on the ground. He's rushed for 920 yards and is averaging 8 yards a carry. He also has 8 rushing touchdowns as well. Overall, Jayden Daniels leads the entire country with 4,100 total yards. His 38 touchdowns responsible for lead the SEC and are number 2 in the entire country. He also leads college football, averaging 10.5 total yards per play. Again, his numbers have been absolutely insane this year, but because LSU has 3 losses, his odds are a bit lower. There are a number of other players though that have won the Heisman with 3 losses. Most recently, you remember Lamar Jackson and Robert Griffin III, they took home the Heisman while their team had 3 losses. So it's definitely doable. Not to mention, what Jayden Daniels has been doing the last couple of weeks is absolutely insane. This past weekend against Florida, he threw for just under 400 yards with 3 passing touchdowns. He also rushed for 235 yards with 2 rushing scores. Then the week prior against Alabama on the road, he threw for 220 yards with 2 passing touchdowns while rushing for 160 yards and a rushing score. He's putting up video game numbers this season, and Jayden Daniels should be the betting favorite. But currently, it's someone else. At minus 110 is Oregon quarterback Bo Nix. Now, if you're a frequent viewer of my channel, you would know I absolutely love Bo Nix. I've had him ranked at number 1 in my Heisman rankings numerous times this season, but to have him as the betting favorite, I just don't agree with that over Jayden Daniels. Now, that's not to throw away the season Bo Nix is having because he's been one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football this season. He's currently completing 78% of his passes and is thrown for 3,100 yards. He has 29 passing touchdowns with only 2 interceptions. He's also added 5 touchdowns on the ground as well. Currently, Bo Nix is 6th in the country in total yards and 5th in the country in touchdowns responsible for. Again, he's one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football, but I don't know how you can have him over Jayden Daniels at the moment. Now for Bo Nix, he also has a chance to finish his season strong. He has 2 games left in the regular season and likely a matchup against Washington in the Pac-12 title game. So if he has 3 great games and Oregon wins the Pac-12, he certainly has a good enough Heisman case. But as of right now, given the sample size we've been given, I think Jayden Daniels should be the favorite to win the Heisman as he's been the best player in all of college football. But like I said at the beginning of this video, there are 4 players that still have realistic odds of winning the Heisman Trophy. Actually, there are 6 if you include Beck and Milroe. So these next couple of weeks are going to be absolutely crazy because each of these players need to have fantastic performances to help their Heisman odds. So who do you think is going to win the Heisman Trophy this season? Do you think it's going to be one of the 4 players that have better than 6-1 odds? Or do you think there's a player that still has an outside chance that isn't inside the top 4? Whoever it is, let me know in the comment section down below. Before you leave, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications if you're new to my channel. I'm posting college football videos all season, so make sure to subscribe so you never miss a video. Also, don't forget to drop a like on this video as well. It helps out with that YouTube algorithm and helps share the video with more college football fans. Plus, it only takes a second to do. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all in my next video.